It's the time of the year again, Inktober 2021. The first one, crystal. I've picked ice. Oh, water crystal. Let's go. Simple drawing always. Broad shape, ignoring all the details. Basically a little mountain with the shadow, and that's all I seek to do in this simple drawing. I guess any beginners can do, and not that hard. Even if your shape is wrong, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's broadly correct. Alright, let's start painting. First thing, I'm gonna drop the whole value of the paper down a notch. That's the reason for this is because I want the highlight to pop. If you look at a crystal, there are some highlights in there. The intention of dropping the entire page down one value is so that when I keep the paper white, they will certainly shine. And one of the thing about crystal is you want the shines to come through, right? That's the whole idea. Right, the next thing that I'm going to do is to mix pretty dark stuff. Basically it's phthalo green, it's my permanent alizarin crimson, it's my French ultramarine, it's my queen burnt orange, all those colors thrown in not equal proportion, but to make it really dark and beautiful. You can already see the background is a mixture of burnt queen orange with French ultramarine, so that's already a pretty good mixed. But with cobalt as well, actually, and so you can see that it granulates nicely with a very textured background. Now I'm going in with bits and bobs of darks in the sketch, because I'm observing where the darkest bits are, and I'm putting it down as a statement to state the values of 5 down on the paper. I typically use a scale in my head at least of 1 to 5, 1 being paper white, 5 being the darkest I can make with my potent dark colors, as you can see right there. Again, the intention is to make the highlight, the paper white, shines through. Because I've already darkened the background by 1 notch, now I'm going to go down with 5, and so all those little contrasty little values you will see will certainly make the whole thing looks like a crystal, right? I'm putting in light blues, cobalt mostly, and I'm dipping in, but I'm being very careful not to just take one piece of blues and spread it all around. It's tiny little shapes carved according to how I see the crystal structures are. In some ways I'm drawing with my brush, which is something I tell people not to do, but in this case, because of the texture, it is what you have to do. I drop in some greens just for measure. It is a bit of the phthalo green, very very lightly mixed with a bit of blue as well, so it's almost turquoise but not quite, blue green. And I also put in a bit of the edge of the shadows, because I really don't want the shadow to be so hard and harsh, so I double layer it. There's a bit of a protruding lighter tone on the shadow, you can see later. And the idea is that I softened the shape somewhat. Again, I'm sculpting little tiny shapes that I see in the crystal. It's very important to read those tiny little shapes, because that's what makes the crystal. And I'm again trying to accurately portray the value as much as I can. One of the things you need to note is that I'm leaving judiciously lots of highlights white, paper white. They're tiny little shape, but they have to be left white. Otherwise you lose the whole idea of darkening the background, isn't it? So now the contrast is background 1 notch down, highlight, paper white. You will certainly see the white shining through. At this stage of the sketch, I am already thinking about softening edges, softening and not keeping my hard edges, if you like. The structure of the crystal is coming through nicely. I'm just sculpting, tiny little shape, dot here and so on. I'm being very conscious not to create big shape at this point, because the texturing of the crystal are tiny little shape. Sometimes in the sketch frenzy, it took me about 15 minutes to do this sketch. I do have to take a breather. I take a step back. I put my name down just sometimes just to wait for the sketch to dry before I do anything else. You know, just do some, you know. Occasionally, I even watch Netflix for 5 minutes just to wait for the water to dry off before I continue. And patience certainly is one of those things that you have to learn lots when you're painting watercolor. You just can't rush it when the paper is wet. Otherwise, you'll be doing wet to wet, wet in wet all the time. It may not be what you want to do. You might want it to be wet on dry, and patience is the only thing that will get you there. I also use a bit of white to get some of the white. Opaque white, as in this Copic white that I use, is not the same as paper white. I use both, and they give you a different sense or variety of it. So I hope you enjoyed this. Stay safe wherever you are. Bye.